Welcome, everybody, to the Rebel Crone and another episode of Thursdays with Maurice. I'm so excited once again to have my dear friend with me. And it's a total mystery once again where we're going with this, but I just know, and I can promise you that whatever we talk about is going to be fun, it's going to be enlightening, and it's going to move along. I interviewed Rachel Schaefer a couple days ago, and I just posted it last night, which would have been Tuesday night, and this is Thursday morning. And anyways, in this interview with Rachel Schaefer, who's the partner of Joel, the perceiver, she spoke about how women speak in spirals. And I thought, this is so true. We just this beautiful spiraling of conversation where we're actually weaving a web of context and inspiration. And I thought, like, my friend Maurice and I, that's what we do. We do a lot of spiraling and weaving when we talk. That's, I think, what the magic comes of it, that it's just not, linear left brain, go. We really get into the flow, this flow of spirit to see, where it takes us. And for me, that is where the magic happens, is when you can't predict, you don't know, and you just go with it. So let's just go with it. Here we go. Hi, Maurice. Welcome.
Hey, thank you, and glad to be back.
Happy Thursday to you, which is really Wednesday, but we're confessing, but it will post on Thursday.
Yeah, I was going to say, what is she talking about? Today's Wednesday morning. We
I
record ahead of time.
I thought you'd be thinking that when I said it, so I wanted to clarify that we're just, so it takes a while to upload everything. I put my bumpers on and do a little editing. Not much with us, just usually the bumpers on either side. And then, it's just uploading it, making the thumbnail. I mean, that's the hardest thing for me, Maurice, is, and probably with my introduction, that whole weaving and flow thing. So when it
Mhm.
comes down to make a thumbnail and a little synopsis of what we spoke about, for me, that is just, it's like taking something that is magical and beautiful, putting it in a box, putting it in this box of a few words to capture the feel of it. And that is just, I find that really challenging. Um, Even though I have like a logical brain that loves systems and business, things like that, I just a struggle with this. That takes me probably the most time, is figuring out like how to say what we spoke about in a few words.
Yeah, I can appreciate that because we go everywhere. I mean, you're right. I never thought of it in that terminology, but you're right. We spiral when we talk. It's not like, at least I don't have an agenda. I'm not trying to prove, A plus B plus C minus D equals E or whatever. It's not necessarily linear. It is to a degree when I'm making a point, but then we could be off, we could be somewhere else in the next two sentences. And it just,
Yeah.
well, it's kind of a in the moment thing with us.
It is, and that I feel like is the beautiful flowing and trusting, creativity. Trusting that, that it's going to be great. I have a funny story to share with you. Years
Sure.
ago, my partner and I had a radio station in Sacramento, and we did it for about 5 years. We had a weekly radio show, and it was called Legalese, because he's a lawyer. And the first time we went on to do the show, we had like a notebook full of like the topics and everything we were going to talk about. We're like, oh, it said ready, countdown, you're live. We both just went, oh. And then we just, oh, okay. And we're going through this notebook. And we did that a few times and realized that we got to like page one or two with it, that the time goes by really fast and we don't stick to anything. Well, fast forward a few years, we would just like on the way driving to the radio station, we're like, well, what should we talk about today?
Yeah, yeah, really.
It's just we started relaxing into the flow. But that was a little more of a linear, station as opposed to like what we're doing, a very different nature. Um,
Yeah.
But still, and I think this is like a really good point to make, Maurice, about just in our lives in general. When I first started the Rebel Crone, I would really outline and detail like what I was going to talk about in each video. I'd hang up a little outline and I'd really have my talking points. And you'll see there's a very different, they are very different, my early videos to the videos I do now. And so I've relaxed, I practice, and I'm relaxing more into the message. But still, sometimes it doesn't work. Like I did a video the other day on soul traps, like what I think are the real soul traps. And I thought I'm so spot on, and I'm just, and I went back and I listened to it, and it wasn't just like a spiraling the conversation. It was a little kind of ADD, ADHD sort of.
Mhm.
Like I have to do it over again, but I got it out and now I can think about it in a deeper level and I've more information, I've figured things out and I need to get more specific with it to the point because I felt like it was too spinny. It wasn't like when we speak, there's always a topic that we're talking about, and I hopefully we are like moving that topic along, and then if it segues into another one, that's the weaving, right? It segues into
Mhm.
another one, but we always kind of weave back around. Well, anyways, just as an example, sometimes it does work for me. Sometimes I get too freewheeling with it and I don't get to the point. So it's this balance, right? I mean, I think what we're talking about is balance of feminine and masculine, the different ways of thinking things. And we can't, if we have just had pure feminine, spirally, swirly, where's it going? And if you have too masculine, it gets too rigid. So within us all, there's just this beautiful kind of blend.
Well, yeah, we all know it. We've been hammered forever, at least for the last 25 years for me anyway. We're all a mixture of masculine and feminine anyway, to some degree or another. The more masculine you are, the more predictable you are by the standard rules of what that's supposed to be. And the same thing with the feminine. The more feminine you are, the more predictable you fit into that box. But there's a whole range of behavior patterns and personality types in between those extremes. That is the linear. On the left hand side or right hand side, whichever. In my case, the left hand side you got the feminine. On the right hand side you got the masculine. Well, that's a broad range of things. From one
Yeah.
to the other, and everybody is a kind of a mixture. I mean, there's
Yeah.
masculine in every woman I've ever met, but some of them are way more so than others. And there's feminine in just about every man you've ever met too. But some are way more accentuated than others, as we all know. And it works not only in external behavior, but it works internally as well in our
Oh,
mental, the way we
absolutely.
process things
Yeah.
mentally. And
Yeah.
we naturally, in our society, we like to put everything in a box. This is this, that's that, that's that. Well, life is a little more complicated than that.
It's just so funny because you mentioned that because what I wanted to say is that you look at our media, whether it's comedy, whether it's some kind of a sitcom thing, or it's a movie, or it's whatever it is, we look at what entertains people, and it's usually the stereotypical stuff,
Yes. Hmm.
of men and women, and that's where we find like humor in. So you look at a lot of the shows, and even way back when, like was it the Honeymooners, the
Oh yeah.
Leave It to Beaver. I mean, all these older shows where it was very stereotypical. And it could be like a serious, this is life, Pollyanna life of the family, where mom and dad sleep in separate beds, fully clothed in their pajamas. And,
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, come on. And how do you get little Junior with that?
You
And
don't ask those questions.
no, no, we don't talk about that. Or you have like the funny comedy relief of, think about I Love Lucy
Oh
and
yeah.
what she epitomized the harebrained feminine, but something, I mean, her humor was so smart, highly intelligent woman that
Hmm.
played that role. let's not confuse, the role for the actual person, but how popular these things are and how Three's Company. I mean, just keep going back, kind of pulling back through time of all, these shows where people find that incredibly entertaining. And why? Because the stereotype of it, I mean, at least we get a good laugh out of it, right? As
Mhm.
opposed to the what we usually find in relationships, the frustration with the other person's personality. A lot of people with their partner, as far as women being with a man, get really like so frustrated because can he not think outside the box? He's so like this, and I'm talking about this. It's like, duh, can't you hear me? Why don't you this? Why don't you that? And the men, you're so emotional. So we in real life we tend to really struggle with those traits in the other person. So maybe that's why we think it's so funny when it's on the big screen. We just have to learn to start laughing in our own lives about the differences and lighten up about it. Just lighten up. Because what is it showing you, right, Maurice? The bottom line is your world is showing you something about you. So if there's something frustrating me in my partner, especially a close partner, that's showing me something about me and maybe my imbalance and my not accepting of a side of myself. What have you found in your life with that?
Well, it's interesting. My life, mostly I've been alone. I've been married twice, but short, actually relatively short. The longer one was 8 years.
That's
And
what Judy.
yeah, Judy, that was,
Yeah.
and I was older. My God, I was 59 years old when I met her. And the other one, I was in my early 30s when I met my first wife, and we had our daughter, and I did that whole thing. That occupied me to my, well, I was still in contact with my daughter. So that's the stereotypical kind of a situation. Judy was kind of an anomaly, but in between there was like, my God, probably a good 15 to 20 years where I lived alone. And I've been alone since 2010. That's another 15 years.
Yeah.
So and I don't mind it. I recognize it's great to have a companion. It really is. But I don't, for me personally, I guess I don't need one, to define
Yeah.
myself. I'm perfectly content with who I am. Although like I say, it would be nice to have a lady in the house, but it would have to
Yeah.
be the right one, not just a one.
Exactly. You don't need a space filler.
Correct. Yeah. So, like I say, I guess I'm kind of not typical. I apparently don't require that. It's nice if it happens. I can tell you
Yeah.
that it's beautiful if it happens, but it's not required. So,
I think some of the trends that I'm seeing and reading about, whether the truth of those or not, is that a lot of younger people are moving towards celibacy and autonomy. It's the whole indoctrination of that you have to be in a relationship, things are falling away with it. Now, some of that I feel like is indoctrination falling away, but also I feel like there's some programming involved in the two. You know what I
well,
mean?
you're
So it's
right
it's
there.
always it's always a it's always a mixture, break apart of the nucleus family. We can bring down a society really, really fast. But then there's also something beautiful about people not having this neediness and having to live up to the expectations of what the world's saying that you have to do, and also finding yourself. And here's the problem. Maybe we can go into this a little, Maurice, is the sexualization of youth. Your brain's not fully developed till you're 25. So why are we sexualizing very, very young people they're not ready for that. They're just not ready to have that sort of interaction because sexuality is this powerful merging with another spirit. In fact, Joel, you remember the interview? I
I
can't remember
do.
if it's when he interviewed me or I interviewed him. I think when I was interviewing him, and he talked about how when a man and woman have intercourse, that the woman, it's different for each. And the woman is imprinted by the man for 7 years. She carries an energetic signature from the man.
Hmm.
Hello. I mean, talk about casual sex and why you want, them being like sexist. It's not, there's massive difference. Do you want to have a lot of partners and be imprinted with all this confusing things and get all scattered inside you? And then the same token, you say now men, it's a little more vampiric in a sense where they're drawing off of the feminine energies. But anyway, so it's so different to handle these really, I think they're rarefied currents of attraction and all of that. To handle these, I just kind of think we should be in a little more mature bodies and we should really come into ourselves more. I'm not saying you have to
Well,
wait till marriage, but I could see where that would come from, why a society would say something like that.
you know, that leads to something that's completely, um, I,
Spiral it. Go ahead, spiral
I
it,
am going to
Maurice.
spiral it because that leads directly into something a video I posted on my Facebook wall from my friend Jeff Gates about the overlay of it was about the depth of the internet, AI. Remember?
I've got it right here. I could share my screen and show people.
Oh,
Let me
cool.
share
You
my.
liked it too, then.
I haven't, no, but you know what? I put it on my to listen list
Oh my gosh.
and then I didn't get to it and I wanted to. Oh.
Uh-oh.
Okay, let me just share screen quickly. Let's see if this works. I'm not
Okay,
for sure that it's gonna happen, but
let's
just
try.
let's just try. So I don't know if the video is gonna pick this up or not. I've just
Yep,
shared my
that's it.
screen.
That's
Okay,
it.
that's the thing. All right, so I'm gonna leave this up as you talk about it so we have a frame of reference because that was a question I wanted to ask you, Maurice. See, the beauty of letting things spiral is I wanted to get to this because I don't know what this is and I'm really intrigued and I want to know what it is.
Okay, well, I actually, it's really, it's a description of what I call the overlay, the AI overlay of the natural organic way of life. But the surface web is where most people spend their whole lives. And of course, that diagram there shows how the internet, actually the internet works, and which is artificial intelligence behind all of that. But most people live all their lives in the surface web. Then, the upper management, like the vice presidents and above in the hierarchy of industry, or the flag officers in the militaries across the world, are they're in the deep web, and then their bosses, the ones that are kind of pulling the strings, the boards of directors and above them, that's the dark web, as an equivalent of the social structure overlay of what the internet is. Well, it turns out that there's the web that we have. What happened there?
Oh, I'm sorry. I just went to Mariana's web. I had looked that up. So
Oh,
yeah.
that's the next level down that doesn't get discussed much. And then below
Okay.
that, they got another web that functions called the mediator layer. And then they got the fog layer, and then they got the prime arc or prime arch. I call it prime arc, but
Mhm.
CHCH, however. That would if you were to do a Judeo-Christian interpretation of that same story, you could do it. and it,
Mhm.
and instead of the prime arc would be the God figure of the internet. The one that's in the deepest beginnings, the prime mover, and all of
Is
it.
that like the mastermind? Could you say it's like the mastermind, the control center
Yeah,
mastermind of it
bingo.
all?
It's the equivalent of in the religious way of just expressing thing. It's God,
Okay.
the prime. Yeah, the prime source. And I looked at that and I said, well, that's the overlay as well on society. And what got me, to even bring this up was something you said. Oh, talking about the sexuality of young people,
Mm-hmm.
and how that all is foisted upon, and pushed, and all of this kind of thing. That's another version. That's society's external version of the same thing, the overlay. We're all caught in it we're born into it. We all know this story. We come into this world, we don't know anything of this world, so we have to learn the ways of the world.
Yeah.
That's our education. We know the system without belaboring the point. Family first, they're your first influence. Then you go to school and you go spend even in K through 12. You got you're through your most of your teenage years, and then immediately you're thrust into survival mode for the next 20 years. Plus, you're pushed At least it used to be. I don't know what is going on anymore, but it used to be you got pushed into family life and support, and you were taken up with being a young mother or a struggling father trying to provide for the family and do everything survival for, and then you get into your 40s, and that's your midlife crisis years because the kids move out and there you are. Now you got to start finding out who you are.
Right, because the structure that you had built, and you described a pyramid right there. The capstone, we could say, is in utero. You know, you come into the womb, and then you're in your spheres of influence, but also perception and understanding keeps coming out until you come fully into the matrix.
Yeah, yeah, really. And it's all playing the game of just like that. And that's all the world of like on that pyramid that you showed in that, video or picture of the video. That's the surface world. That's and Cliff High is another guy that a lot of people's name they know. A lot of people know a lot of what he said. He's not an unknown character in the alternative community. Cliff High, he talks about it as the grit world. That's
The
another
grit world.
grit, GRIT.
Oh, grit. Okay, yeah.
True grit.
Hmm.
Hard knocks,
Yeah,
that kind of
yeah,
thing. But that's the extent of it, and that's what life is like in the grit world.
yeah.
But we
It's
also
coarse. It's very coarse, coarse
and
and it's gritty. It is. It's just it's very primal and coarse. It's
it's
rough.
very shallow as well, even though it's
Yeah,
complex. But it never goes below the surface of things, or it goes a little bit below. That's where you have your first layer of experts, your
yeah,
sociologists and your psychologists and those kinds of people. They're playing around right on the edge between that first layer and the next layer, which would be the deep web, if you will, by
yeah.
comparison. Well, below that, you've got the dark web, in the internet world, in that pyramid that was shown.
Mhm.
And I see it's just another version of how this world or this world we live in is. And it's not just simple.
No, but
If you stay within one realm, then you can be really expert at it and function really well at it, but know deeply that there's all kinds of other layers and other ways of understanding things. It doesn't discount the validity of what's going on in the grit world, if you will.
and that's where we come into choice in sovereignty and personal choice. And often when I'm doing interviews, women will ask me about, part of the conversation is, well, how do you handle, people in your world that just don't want to wake up? They're just not going to wake up. And because it is a question, like as you start to become aware of things and the layers of stuff and the controlling factors involved, you want everybody to become aware of that. For one thing, to keep you company from where you are, because it can be kind of scary and it's intense. And, so it's nice to have company and someone to talk to about it, but you also want them to come to know what you know for their own sake. But it's also one of these traps, Maurice, because people they can choose to function and they're designed to function at different levels of understanding. We can have the triangle going down and the triangle going up, right? And
True.
people are designed to function at different levels. I mean, ultimately there is no there because we keep evolving, expanding, and growing through eternity, which is like the good news. So if you don't get it now, your soul, your oversoul will create another circumstance for you to get it and see why all these other things, insidious control patterns don't work.
Well, that would be the next level. Exactly true, though, what you just said. First of all, you've got the surface layer where a view of life works. But then the next layer says, like what you just described, you come to say, wait a minute, that's not all there is, and you start to get some realizations and some understandings, and then you say, this is a more clarified view. I want to share this. I want people to see what I see. So a lot of people they move into that area but
They
and
get
then
on their soapboxes.
yes, they do, and then they run into exactly what you just described, that not everybody wants to get it or can get it. And then what do you do? But you know better. You know a better way. Why now I'm going to scream louder or something? Well, it doesn't work. So then you get to the next level, and that's another way of the growth of wisdom. Wisdom also functions that way.
I was
The-
just gonna say, now we just segued into crone or elders.
yes, we did. Uh,
Yeah.
and there's all kinds of levels of that. Joel, uh, a couple of days ago when Joel interviewed you, he made some tremendous points about that very thing in his, back and forth with you. He's talking from the traditions of the Toltecs and whatever else is that he's involved with. Mostly he's a big Castaneda fan too. And but the wisdom, it permeates all traditions as well. You can find wisdom in
Mm.
any ancient wisdom tradition. It's there. It's in the Bible. It's in the Quran. It's in everything. There's there
Yeah.
there's wisdom is floats through all of it, and it's how you look at things. Well, just like that pyramid structure on the video that you put up there at the beginning. There's the surface world, then there's the world below it, then the world below it, then the world below it, then the world below it. All levels of understanding, and it's the
Eh,
more you see that, the more you tend to sit back and say, "Wow," and you grow, I guess is one.
I think I this weekend I was up in Red River with two of our close friends,
I know who
Kestrel
they are.
and Happy.
I
And
know.
this was one of the conversations that we had was on this exactly, that there's a
Really?
point in life that we really want to uncover what's going on. And while I think that this is kind of like my soul trap thing, is while it's really important that I really feel it's important to pull the lid off of the shenanigans, what we've been hoodwinked to, society's being hoodwinked, and these different layers. Let's like peel back that membrane so we can look and we can see,
Mhm.
oh, this is control me. Because I want to be free in this life. That is
Right.
because I am free. I'm a free autonomous being. The ultimate deception is to convince people that we're under control of other things, and we put it on ourselves. We put all of our own limitation, we put up our own bars in our own prison, we set our own, standards and belief structures, paradigms for ourselves, and we have to live within that until we expand it out. So I think it's really important to look at all the perpetrations on mankind, whether it be our hidden history.
Mhm.
History books have all gotten rewritten. This is part of the archaics that
Yeah, he's not the
and
only one, but he does a
no, but
fair
he's
job
one of
of
the,
it.
he does a very good job of looking back
Yeah.
at, the discrepancies of the text, starting from the turn of the century and going backwards. It paints a whole different story of how are told right now, currently in the indoctrination in our system.
Right.
Same with
Right.
archaeology, same we can go down the list of anything, same with health stuff. In the 1800s, it was, doctors practiced energy medicine. They practiced homeopathy, which is energy medicine. They had all kinds of different energy devices. It was very progressive. It was very in touch with the ethers as a controlling realm, the invisible realm of the physical. And it was so much more expansive. And then turn of the century, the flips of the paradigms, new control pattern comes in. We have the pharmaceutical industry, that no longer we can do any of that other stuff. And we have to put petroleum based,
That's the
medicines, and
overlay be showing itself through
it
industrialization, I
is
guess.
industrial, exactly. The Industrial Revolution, the whole thing is like the Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 or 8 to 9, whatever that whole thing is. That's not like that was not written in the tablets of, humankind and how to structure society. That's an invention, a current
Of course it
invention.
is.
So, anyways, we have all of this stuff that keeps us locked into living in,
The
a
top
surface
layer.
thing, the top layer. So we peel back, we start to see, oh my gosh, we're free. I am free to choose like how I work, when I work, what I want to do, how I want to feel, how, and we just keep peeling that back and we can live in a more expansive world. But as we peel that back, it can be really shocking, right, Maurice?
Yes,
You know,
very
there's,
much so.
and it can really piss you off because it's like, whoa, who's doing what to me and taking this away from me personally and mankind, and it pisses you off, and you can get really on, start seeing shadow, the shadow in everything around you. Are you part of that? You've been infiltrated. You're MK Ultra. You're this, you're that, and there's all this finger pointing, which I see is just so ridiculous. That person's been, infiltrated, and that person's this and that. There's this incredible paranoia, fear, anger. And then you're stuck in the matrix, man. You're doing exactly what they want you to do at those other levels. You want to look
Well,
in on us? Okay, look in on us, but now we got you. Does that make sense?
oh, absolutely. That's
Yeah.
yeah. Well, I wrote down two names. The first one I ever ran into that I noticed was a guy named Rush Limbaugh. Now that goes back probably 30 years ago at least,
Oh, yeah.
not 40. But he
Yeah.
was a big he was on the radio.
Yeah.
Back in the days when AM radio is you'd find him on the AM radio stations, and he was a great political. He was pretty conservative or Republican or whatever, but the point was, he was pulling the cover off even that far back publicly and within the top layer of society. Um, there was a guy, Alex Jones. Everybody has at least have heard his name, if
Mhm.
not heard his voice. Um, is another one. There's all kinds of people at that level in different areas. Alex Jones, Rush Limbaugh. My God, there's so many I don't even want to begin to start naming them, but you all know what I'm talking about. I look at those. David Icke is another one from
Mhm.
my God, from the early '90s at least. Um, I look at those people as what I call gatekeepers. Though what they've done is they've opened up the gate to the inner barn door, but you just go into the first barnyard and they got a fence around it, and they're gatekeepers. They want to keep you logged into that, and a lot of people are, and that's what you're talking about. You discover all of these discrepancies in the official story, and then you spend your whole life trying to fight them. Well, that doesn't disturb the system at all. The system is all set up for that kind of thing.
Oh yeah, they want it's the reaction. They're doing that for the reaction. How do you
Absolutely,
harvest the creative powers of
absolutely. It's part of
humanity?
their trap.
Yeah, it's part of the trap. So that's actually the video that I'm going to be making probably tomorrow morning, is the real soul trap. The real soul trap is right now. It's not when you die and you leave this planet. That's out there in the future. That's the soul trap, is that idea that you're soul trapped. Because you can't only be trapped right now. You can't be trapped in the future, and maybe you're trapped in the past, but there's nothing you can do about that. It's right now. And these different, reacting, whether you're engaging the masculine where you want to react and fight against it, or you're engaging in your feminine thing, which you just retreat and you want to try to smooth it over and work the feminine jujitsu way of going through it, but you're reacting to it. Or maybe this feminine thing is like saving everybody else, you know?
Let me mention something.
Mhm.
Uh, I'm all right. I'm a guy, so I represent the male perspective more than the female here in this dialogue between us. Um, I rather enjoy not knowing what to expect from a woman. I enjoy the surprises that you all bring most of the time. Sometimes they're uncomfortable, but generally speaking, I sit back and say, "Wow, that's really amazing."
I think that has a lot to do with Maurice, and correct me if I'm wrong, but what I hear from that is that there's such power in the feminine channel, in the feminine ways. This is pure emotion, heart and emotion. This is our power source. You think the brain has power? No, it's their emotions. This is the power source. And I think men look back and they're like, whoa, there she blows, there she goes. But there's something probably pretty incredible, a little scary about it, because when she blows, she can really blow. But there's just something. I don't think that I think men start they know that feminine power, whether they can appreciate
Well,
it
we
and
don't
love it
take
and
it as
protect
strong.
it.
We do. The thing is, the thing I've noticed is women, they don't have a control. They have a tendency to get out of control with it. They
Mhm.
it blows so far that it can become
It
dangerous.
controls them. It can
Yeah,
control them.
okay, that's a better
That's
way
the
of saying
challenge.
what I'm trying to
Yeah,
get
because
at.
it's not like I'm losing control. And that's like the worst thing a man could say to a woman like that. But a man can realize this is really strong powers
It is
to
that.
saddle, to ride, to harness that for a woman.
Mhm.
That takes a long, long time to be able to harness those. And especially when we're going through our cycle and our fertile
Mhm.
years.
Right.
Man, this is like riding a wild horse every single day and a different one. What is it today? But when you come in your crone years, there's something that levels out about it for a woman that it's much easier now. It's like, all right, I can get in the freaking saddle of this because my emotions are
There,
easier to handle.
that's where the cronehood comes in.
Yeah.
That's when a woman starts to tame the wild horse that she's been riding for so long.
Yeah.
That's been riding her, and it's been galloping off on its own almost without control, and the woman's just hanging on, and hopefully, and
Oh
the
my
man
God, it's
represents
so
just the
true.
opposite. We're the ones that kind of ground you in a way with the male energy. And now we're talking positive stuff. Some people would say divine masculine or divine feminine. We don't have to go that far. Effectively, it is that, but wisdom from the male side is to get control of it so that you're
Well, a
running
man,
your life.
a man can put up the fence, the fence around it. Okay, here, run, and I've got you. You're protected. You're not going to go run off, and it's not going to jump off a
Exactly.
cliff.
Or fly
It's
off
happened.
like on a balloon. We used to call them space
Yeah,
cadets back in the long, long time ago. Women that would,
yeah.
it was kind of a cheap way of referring to somebody that just was, unpredictable completely, even to herself. There was no
Yeah.
rhyme or reason. She was just completely a space cadet. Not even,
Well, it's that, but here we go. So we're talking about then the dance between men and women, what
yeah,
men can provide. And it goes back, Maurice, to the whole thing of like, how do you generate power? Like, let's get a steam engine. You don't just generate steam and steam goes, it disperses. There's no power in that. No matter how much steam you're pumping out in the air, if there's not a container for it, it just disperses. So
that's
when you
correct.
have a
That is,
container for it, that's where power happens. And man, the what can come through, it can drive a train. How heavy are those big things?
yeah,
It's like so just that example alone. But if you think of that, the masculine and feminine between relationships and all their nuances, but men can provide a container, a safe place that women can like, oh, and she can kind of bump up against those, but feel safe because, whoa, this
that,
horse I'm trying to ride. Okay, thank you so much. A man, here's the clue, men, I'm talking to you, is don't react. Don't react when a woman's like that. Don't react. Don't buy into it. She's not intentionally trying to screw with you. She's not intentionally, I'm going to be just emotionally out of control. It's not, it's not on purpose. This is like these are primal forces that a woman's dealing with, and they're very tricky to handle. And it's a
boy, are
lot.
they ever.
And so don't judge her for that, but just put your big, strong, loving arms out. I gotcha. I gotcha, honey.
Yeah,
Don't react when she's like that. I love you. I got you. And you watch how quickly she's able to diffuse that energy and relax, and it can come back into, harmony and balance. See how quickly that happens as
that
opposed
is,
to, get a grip. You're out of control. What's your problem? So don't do that. Be big and encompassing and provide that container. Gotcha, babe. That's okay. I hear
well,
you're having a tough time. It's cool.
that's that's part of the growth and the wisdom of the male as he progresses through his journey from young personhood to
Yeah.
a position or whatever you want to call it of wisdom along the way. That's part of the learning process that the male has to go through to understand what you just said,
Yeah.
because initially we don't know how to deal with it, and we just write it
Mhm.
off as crazy, and we don't really address what's going on because we don't know what's going on either.
because you've been cut off. Everybody's like, it's a little more obvious to see the suppression of the feminine, suppression of women, because it's been the time of the patriarchy as opposed to the matriarchy. So it's much easier to see the suppression of the feminine and women in a patriarchy. Okay, an unbalanced patriarchy. It's so much easier to see that. So, but there's been just as much damage, though it's been different, done to the masculine. Men have not come out of this whole wounded patriarchy, toxic patriarchy, whatever you want to call it, this whole paradigm of imbalance that we're living in. Men do not come out of this unscathed. They've lost what it is to be a male warrior, which, to be a male warrior, in my book, you have to understand the feminine power within you.
Yeah, I
Within
agree.
you. If you're so divorced from your own feeling center, your own power, your own heart center, then you're looking for it from women. If it's out of control, it's scary and women, all that, because you have no idea. You're not in touch with that. Get in touch with it. It doesn't mean anything about your sexuality, your preferences, or it's not a weakness. It's enhancing your strength, your true strength, by get in touch with the feminine part of you. You
Yeah.
know,
Mhm.
it may seem scary, but when you touch it, it's like, wow, man, you're just going to be more of you. You're going to be more powerful, and
Right.
you're going to
Well, that's
understand the feminine better.
like I said, that's part of the that's the journey of all of us. Women come in, they've got all the strong, estrogen and femaleness about them, and that we've just been discussing. And most people are listening here are probably females, so they know what you're talking about from life experience. The men that do listen here, we're hearing about it and saying, well, we don't experience life that way, but at least we're open to hearing about it, initially. Um, where am I going with this? We come in, we don't understand the other side. We don't even understand ourselves, for crying out loud. And it's a learning process. And in that learning process, you're not only learning about who the hell you are, but you're learning about others as well, and the differences in what's really going on with them. And that's what you're discussing when you're talking about the emotional aspects of femininity, and the fact that males don't possess it nearly as deeply, but we do possess it. We just don't
Absolutely.
possess it, and of course our society squelches a full understanding of things. Again, here we go with that freaking overlay thing, but it's everywhere. It suppresses natural what should, I would say, should, man, that's a bad word, but what should happen is we should grow it much more easily and smoothly into this understanding. We should know all this stuff at 20 years old.
Oh
We're
my
lucky if we
God,
know
so
it. We're
true.
lucky if we know it's in my case. I was damn glad to know some of it when I was 70, for crying out loud.
Our life spans are just way too short, Maurice. Right when you start figuring
Absolutely.
out the
And I didn't
stinking
know it
game.
all. Believe me, I don't know it all yet. And I'm in my freaking 80s now.
But don't you feel poised? Like, if we could double our lifespan, what we could accomplish and how we could be and what society could grow into if enough wise people had a longer spell on this planet, had a longer
Oh yeah,
run.
well, it
You
would be
know,
nice.
yeah, and give people more chance to figure it out, because within the given lifespan of humanity, that it's a lot to figure out. And just as we get it together, boom, we got to check out, and it's
Well,
like,
that's been the
oh,
story. That has been the story. Of course,
yeah,
now here we go with a swirly thing, one a spiral.
swirl.
I happen to watch the external world too, still. That upper layer stuff, that the 3D world, the grit world, all of that's going on publicly all over the place. I'm looking at that with eyes that are not completely stuck in that world, and I'm seeing a story being played out. I'm telling you right now that hasn't been played out yet in human history. Literally, we are coming to a point where the old storyline is not going to be repeated.
Yeah,
Something is on the rather quick horizon, and it does cover all of humanity one way or another. How it's going to play out, I don't know. But I do
Mhm.
know that an aspect of humanity is what is the word? They're going to transmute some kind of way. Something is going, it's not just going to be a rinse and repeat cycle like supposedly it has been 5, 6, 10 times in our past. You
Well,
know,
we're coming into a new age, the age of
yeah, and
Aquarius.
but
So
it's
that
different.
it's different.
Human,
We haven't been in that age in our recorded history. So it's a new energies are playing out, a new paradigm we're coming into.
we're not going to be stuck in the same old
Yeah.
thing that you and I both know from our own life experiences and what we know of our parents' life's experiences and our grandparents. You know, as far as usually
Yeah.
3 generations is about as far as the knowing goes, actually. Anyway, and after that, it's just reading books and hearing stories that other
Right.
people who weren't there are telling. You know, the revisionist stories of
Yeah.
things.
The victor stories.
Yeah, the victory story. Effectively, that is what
Yeah.
revisionist history is.
But I think this is it's like very exciting that you bring this up, Maurice, because any of you out there that I'm sure a lot of our listeners and a lot of the women in particular, but some men, I mean, I know beautiful men that are empathic and, have developed feminine sides that they're not afraid of. But for anybody that's of an empathic nature, that we sense that it's going through our bodies. This energy, the restructuring out there, we can feel it within us, and
I know
how it
that's true.
and for men that aren't sure on that, how that feeling is maybe time going very quickly. It's like, I just like, why the day just flew by, kind of a level of discomfort, where it's like, and questioning, "Oh, am I really doing the right thing? Am I really happy with this? Is this really, it's just this whole questioning and feeling uncomfortable almost in your own skin because it's just this change and it's happening on Mother Earth. It's happening in everything connected to Mother Earth. So it's us too. It's physical
It is us,
vessels. It's
absolutely.
us because we are a part of, no matter you want to acknowledge it or not, but Mother Earth is your mother. We are a part of her flesh and blood, so to speak, her
There's millions of
system.
people. I was talking to David just the other day again about this very thing. The big difference is there's millions of people that can feel exactly what you're talking about. We can feel it within ourselves. I know you feel it. I know I feel it. I know he feels it. I know there's millions of other people without being able to name them. That never used to be the case. It
Yeah.
literally was not, even in your life, and you're 20 years younger than I am, at least. You, as you grew up, you were lucky to know if you knew one growing up in your school, you were lucky. A lot of times you felt like you were the only person in the world that felt the way you were. You did.
Mhm. Yeah.
And you never met anybody that expressed anything other than what was expected.
Well, especially my out of body experiences
Well,
happening very
that's what I'm
young.
talking
Yeah,
about.
it's just like, but even people that were just very, they remember that sensitivity when they were younger, where they saw things in their room, they heard things in their room. The bridge between this world and the invisible world was very thin when we were younger. And some of us remember that more and had very acute experiences, with that.
Well,
Um,
let me
yeah.
interject. I've been busy over the last 10 years, interacting with a lot of people in your age group, the people that were born in the 60s. That would have been my children. I'm from the generation before you guys. I've met quite a few people that have had, is not identical, but similar types of things in their early lives. Well, I was born in 1942, and I'll tell you what, I never met anybody that expressed any aspect of having an experience like that in my whole life until I can't even remember the first one. I would have had to have been in my 50s minimum. And I don't even remember if that's the case, but I've met so many, I mean, more than 10 fingers on my hand, probably double or triple that. I've met people, talk to them, just like I've met you in your
Yeah.
home.
Yeah.
that I know that was their life growing up. But when that happened to them, they were still anomalies. I guarantee you.
Oh,
As you guys
way
express
anomalies.
yourselves, you did not know you were the oddball out.
You couldn't get online to say, oh, what is this? I had this experience. Let
You
me
couldn't ask your
Google
parents
it.
because they didn't know.
They right over their
Yeah, it was
head.
right over their heads.
I love for me, I found some solace in works like with Dolores Cannon
Yeah, I
and
know about
various
Dolores, sure.
people, many years back that started to catalog the different waves. They call them like star seeds or light workers or
Sure.
whatever, but
Mhm.
just like waves of a certain type of being coming on this planet to perform a certain role. And there's different time periods where it came in. And in the early 60s in particular was a wave. There was a wave before that, and then just coming into this time, setting up this time right now, like you were saying, this pivotal change. There's a wave that came in the 50s, there's a wave that came in the 60s, and then there's a few other waves coming in that are even more developed and have like some of these young kids now that are, they just talk very openly about, they remember various lives very clearly. They can describe, they have names, and they have thing, you look it up and it's actually, it's that's it. They know that they were that.
Wow.
You can't. So there's the incredible, or they remember like these amazing skills. They're piano virtuosos at
Mhm. Oh
3 years
yeah,
old, 4 years
I've
old.
seen those on, geez, even
but
on my
but
Facebook
there's
page.
there's something opening up there. The channel of connections, in my view of it, the channel of connection is just opening more and more. But when I was younger, it that wasn't that open. There had been some other people coming in chipping away at it, so there was some chipping away at it. But
Hmm.
there's still, there it was very, the light permeability into this realm. There's just little pinpricks here and there, and we're doing our work as far as opening those apertures. The next generations coming in can open more and more. We
Yeah.
still have a role to do. We still have a role to do with it because it's far from being open. But it is opening more and more and more availability of light, understanding,
Hmm.
knowledge, wisdom about what's really going on here. Because we are, like you were saying, Maurice, we are at the cusp. We're standing perched on the edge of a massive shift in humanity. Now, whether I'll experience it in my life or you'll experience it in your life, I don't know if it's going to be a few more generations before we start seeing where that's going to the other side of it. Because these things are playing out in epics. They're playing out in, or epochs, everywhere, in large chunks of time. It's that a mortal's lifespan is such a little teeny slice within that. So we think
Hmm.
about this big change. We have to just know that this, my perspective, is playing out over a much longer period of time. So in our lives, we might not see the shift from this to this. We still may be in within the shifting thing. Now, if you go into some of the work of, where there's going to be some cataclysmic things and resets happening, 2040, then I think the next date's 2054 or something with the dates of the changes. Well, maybe there's a good cause for that. I don't know. What I know right now is to be kind of, I think for me is just to be gracious about as much as I want to be on the other side of this, because it's not comfortable. I want to be on the other side of it. But yeah, I don't know in this lifetime if I am or not. But
I think it's going to happen. I think,
do you think it's
yeah,
going to happen soon?
I do. I think it's way sooner than, even that 2040 thing. I think, I honestly, on that one, I'll offer this to you. I think that is part of the programming story. I do. It makes sense according to the history and everything of the official storyline of the world. But I think that's the overlay program. I think what's really happening is not that. I think what we're feeling, and I do know for sure, you feel a version of it, I feel a version of it. Many people listening to this very video feel a version of it without being able to describe it specifically. Is going to be way sooner than that. And we are here to see it. We didn't come in here to drop off 2 days ahead of time. We came in here to see the end of it and the
Well,
beginning of the next.
it,
That's
it that
that's the
starts within
joyful
us.
thing about it. We're going to be here
Yeah.
to see the beginning of whatever the hell the next is. And it's not just going to be back to the caves,
No,
it's not.
no.
I'm telling you, humanity is either at a minimum, it's going to transform, and some of humanity is going to transmute. It's going to be something else. And there you,
Oh
and
my
now
God.
you get into the world of the Dolores Cannons and people like that. And we know that's
Yeah.
woo woo, and we don't want to go too terribly far in this because this is on YouTube and it's a public thing, and we're not pushing one particular program over another.
No, we're not. Even though you know me and I love to go, I'll go as woo as you want to go woo woo,
I
but I'll
know.
also have governors on. I also have rational governors on that. So let me pose this with what you're saying.
Mm,
Right now, when I look out the world as it is right now, and
mm.
I love the word shenanigans, all the shenanigans going on,
Boy,
that
are they
what
ever.
I see is it's the perfect expression of where humanity has been in their consciousness, because there's a time delay. You make a shift now, it plays out over time, then we see change. We're seeing changes more rapidly. The more you evolve, you can see more instant manifestation. But humanity as a whole, what we're seeing playing out, the dynamics is the old earth, is the remnants of the old earth in the
Correct.
new way. We don't get a new earth unless you and I shift.
We are
Yes.
shifting though.
And we are shifting, exactly. So eventually the outer world is going to be a reflection of where humanity is. So, but the most important thing is that can't shift until enough people do this shift inside of us. So I know for a fact for me that I'm already, while it's challenging right now, I'm already feeling the feathering in of this new level of empowerment, this
Correct.
new level of, oh, wow, I'm getting a taste of what it's like to be a divine being incarnate and connected to that source, which is the whole name of the game. So that we have to keep honing that to whatever you're called to do and however it lands in you. What are your issues to overcome? Where can you take your power back? How do you get centered back in love? Still holding on to truth. Um, that's the game. And then this changes out there. So I know in this lifetime, I'm changing. I'm not just,
Absolutely. Let
yeah,
me let me interject because you're doing it. And you know what? You're using the terminology of the old world in the process, but you're doing it. When you're talking about the crone and the wisdom traditions and the business about your web page, you're using the language that the old world understands because that's what people understand. It's the language we're used to using. You're calling it cronism, a crone. That is true, but underlying that, you're expressing that what you just said about where you are right now. You feel it, and you're sharing it to the highest ability you can in the language of the people that are listening. That that you call it the wisdom of the crone. Well, that's the wise woman. We know what that means. That's like the epitome, but you're talking about this is just the beginning. You get to
yeah,
this point and then it expands. To what degree, you don't quite know yet, but you certainly are feeling it. And there's your
yeah.
emotional connection. You feel it probably stronger than a male does, like than even I do, and I feel it pretty strong.
Yeah, that's the
I
gift that
guarantee you, a
women,
woman has
yeah.
capacities I'll never possess in that regard.
Well, in this lifetime, because you chose to
Well,
be a
that is true.
man.
Yeah, yeah. Good. Thank you
Yeah,
for that because that's true, and I did not say that, and I should have. But you thank you for that. That's true
yeah,
in this
yeah.
lifetime.
Yeah, you're here for a masculine experience. I came in for a feminine experience.
Yeah.
We're both, I think, in the camp of reincarnation, the eternal beingness of who we really are, and that we have multiple experiences in this dimension, other dimensions. We have like so much more going on than we can even fathom. So in this experience is this for me is working through the feminine. And that's where I don't want to go off into the confusion about sexes nowadays, but there's two energies, there's masculine and feminine energies. They're the two, the two dichotomies of one thing, the two expressions of one thing.
Mhm.
because back in the other realms, the higher realms, there is no, you can choose if you want to be experience of this or that, but we're all together. We're all of it in a single package.
Yeah.
So that's the interesting thing right now. And let me tell you, that was one of the keys to freedom for me. And we're definitely weaving right now because this is a little offshoot. We're bringing another thread in here of just the choice that you came in a very specific body for a specific reason. And for me to really embrace that I am, because I'm a feminine with a really strong masculine. If you haven't put that together by watching my surprise, surprise. So I've really been self-directed, purpose directed, mission directed, entrepreneur, doing all these things that we typically wouldn't say would be like more feminine traits. But for me to really embrace that, like I am here as a woman, let me really like step into that. As I stepped into my feminine more, that's where I've really been discovering my power, my authenticity.
There you
Um,
go. Yeah.
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 And I'm sure the same, for men out there, you're having a masculine experience. You've had other experiences. If you don't believe in this paradigm, you think it's a one-shot deal, well, then you don't want to listen to this. It won't resonate with you. That's okay. Um, but yeah, so we're here at a specific time for a specific reason in these specific bodies. Like for me, it's none of this is an accident. None of this just whoops, God made a mistake, source made a mistake, and I
Or
need
you're
to
not a
correct
random
it.
marble bolt, bouncing off of other marbles.
No, no. And we're here at this really, like, you may think life really sucks, it's really challenging. Why has all this stuff happened to me? But in all those things that have happened to you in your life, this is where the gold is to be harvested. This is where your strength and your power is going to be found. When you come through the other side of it, not be a victim of this person, that perpetrator that did this to you, that to you, but what has it taught you? What inner strength have you had to galvanize to overcome that? This is your power position, and this is what you have to help other people with. Your story is your medicine. And I was talking with Rachel Schaefer about that. Is our story is our medicine. And we each carry our own type of medicine. And that's how we can heal and help other people because we understand it. You
Well,
know,
that's what people do. We are storytellers. You
mhm.
know that across the board. We tell stories to each other,
Yeah, our life
one
is
way
a
or another.
story. Our
Hmm.
life is a story, right? This
Yes.
is we're playing out a story. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
keep telling yourself though the empowering story, the right story, because you can spin it. Just like how history's been rewritten, you can rewrite your own history. You can spin
Yeah.
it
Who's writing that story,
any
though?
way, right, any way you want. You're writing your own story. Do you want to put the spin of you being a poor victim and all this horrible stuff? Or do you want to put the spin on it that, oh my God, what an amazing person I am. Look what I've overcome. Look at the
Ah.
challenges set before me and look what I did with it. Whoops,
Oh,
didn't make that one, did that one. Let's spin it in,
all right, let me offer something. Then you get into the question of who am I, really?
in
And you find out that I'm bigger than I thought I was, and that there's more to me. There's more to me than I than I was told was. That's a personal kind of an understanding, and I won't go deeply into it verbally, but I'm not talking as if the only one in this room knows what I'm talking about. There's more to you than you initially were told and or even thought.
yeah, and
And
that's the
in
crying
that
shame.
understanding, though, it's not that, oh, I'm God or anything like that. No, it's just that I'm more than I was, and I need to trust that and know that. And
And who am I? And who am I?
in so doing, you expand yourself and you become more centered. You become you become wiser about the way you do things and how you
This
do them.
this is where we can take this pyramid that we were showing before in Maurice's post, and we can invert it, right? And then
Yes.
we start this progression of going through into self-awareness, understanding, who am I, why am I here, what am I supposed to be doing? Ultimately, those are the questions. This whole thing, who's controlling, who's doing all that? Yeah, good to know that. but you can still fulfill who you are without ever knowing that. In spite of all of that,
Uh,
we absolutely have the opportunity to figure out who we are, why we're here, and what we're supposed to be doing. You
that's the
know,
organic way, actually, not
yeah.
the overlay way.
Yes, exactly. That's the spiral up, as
Yep,
opposed to that's syntropy versus entropy. This is the entropic system of trapping us. You
correct.
think about this. I did a video a while back about this as you're going to crack up, Maurice, when the whole P. Diddy thing first came up, I did this video, The Problem with Hollywood. I never posted it, but it was because everything's in this like triangular structure in this world. And I
Absolutely
was
true.
proposing that this is a false structure, because it's based on control at the top, and then, on a need to know basis, everything is watered down and watered down so you can control the masses down here. Where
Correct.
you think the Master Jesus said that, I am a servant of you all. And so he knew that the proper shape was at best an inversion of that, and in something else that it's maybe the flower of life, or there's all kinds of other sacred geometry that better explains it. But this pyramidal shape is one of control pattern, where there's a certain, we're told that to reach the top of that pyramid, you've got to be a certain way, look a certain way, do stuff. It's all these false things. And then we're stuck in this control pattern, and it just doesn't play well for us. That's like that shape there. That's a structure. That's a
Mhm.
control structure in this world where, we can step into a different structure. You
It's
know,
there to be had if
it's
you
there.
open to it. It's
Yeah.
there to be had. That much I will say is a true thing.
And I love like very early on, you were talking about the different perspectives. It's like there's in different teachers and different messages come through. And for me, because I like to visualize, I visualize like the whole truth or source or the whole process as this like multifaceted gem, like all these facets. And we can stand and we find a facet where we can look in and we can see, like the finger we often talk about the finger pointing to the moon. But I look at this trajectory of pointing and looking, and I'm like, whoa, I never saw it from this perspective. This is so cool. Oh my gosh, I just expand it. Somebody's
Mhm.
looking at it from over here because this is their aperture in. This is their aperture and this is what they need to see. Someone's looking at it here, here, here. We're all looking at these different perspectives. So it's not a right and wrong thing. It's what's working for that individual. So they say, if you like my channel, great. You resonate with it, great. If you don't, great. Find one that resonates with you and use that as the opening to keep growing and expanding. And then you'll find a different perspective. A
Right.
lot of people come into this perspective through religion, in
They
spite of
do.
religion. And you know why is that, Maurice? Because they go to what they're hungry for is connection and love and acceptance. And they go and it's in the pews where it happens. It's not particularly on the pulpit necessarily. It's in the
Mhm.
pews that it happens where they feel community, they feel loved and accepted. Now, granted, there's other things that may come with that paradigm.
Yeah.
But the soul's desire is that. So that's like an aperture. And then you kind of people either fill it out and then they go, I need something bigger because more expansive. That's not working. And they'll try another one. Or they don't, or they just live their life in that one.
Mhm.
That is okay. Am I to be the judge of somebody's experience? Who am I to be the judge of how source is talking to them? you know, like live and let be. Oh my God, just let
It's
people
not
have their
your.
experience.
We know we learn along the way. We come to the understanding, realization, if you will. It is not ours to do that. It's not our job. And for the longest time, we thought it was. So we did that. We tried to re-educate the world because we knew something they didn't know. We wanted to share it. Hence your your pulpit preachers and people on the
Mm.
street corners or people shouting, I know this, and you everybody needs to know this because you don't know it and it's going on and all that stuff. But you realize you're that's not that's that's part of your journey, but that's not the end of the journey. That's just a transition point. From that, you come to realize, wait a minute, It's not my responsibility. If I know that, that's a great achievement. And that's all I came here to do, was to realize that my own self. Yes, it's selfish, but that's not a negative thing, because in the process you become more expansive in how you deal things. You find another way of going at that is you find your center point. And in your center point, you're the most efficient, effective you as a human being can possibly be. And you're the most at peace with yourself in that process. And in so doing, if you're at peace with you, that's what you spread with around you. You radiate that, as opposed to the disharmony that we have found ourselves in previous aspects of our incarnation. We have been disharmonious, and we've caused problems, and we've said things that we wish we, in retrospect, said, geez, I wish I hadn't have said that or done that. I could have done it much easier, much smoother, more intelligently, if you will,
Oh,
more wisely, actually.
yeah. And maybe this is the part of the new place that we're going into, Maurice, is this more compassionate, expansive space, where everybody can move along the path of
Well, yeah, that
divine
was,
evolvement more rapidly and more easy because there's more information like that. If we look at the imagery I was using before about this faceted crystal, and we're all looking at it from different angles, it's still kind of a cloudy mirror, and we're clearing it off, and we're trying to see more clearly what that is, and we can clear more and more off and have a more expanded perspective. I think that's what's happening. I think the availability of light and the clearing away of things is what's going on.
it is,
What's
it is.
and that to me is going to cause the shift, is because people are like, they're getting it, they're seeing it.
It's going to allow the shift to happen, actually.
Yeah.
And and we're not doing it individually. We're not, our job is to just clear our own selves. If we
Right,
can
but
do that,
collectively, and
yeah, and
everybody's
collectively, but
clearing it
that's what's
off.
happening. It is
Yeah.
happening collectively to a degree. And don't get lost in, well, how many? 10%, 30%, 50%, 1%. I've heard all those percentages. Who the hell knows? It's not 100% likely. So, but don't worry about it. It's not your job.
No,
As
it's
long
because
as
there's a
you're,
tipping point. Because there's a tipping point, right, Maurice? There's a
yes,
100th monkey, and we don't know what the tipping point is in the higher energetic realms
it's not
of
ours. We're not given
like
to know
the.
it.
No, we're not, and it's fine. But there is a tipping point. Strongly feel that one, that there's just so much accumulation of light that it tips the balance on this planet. So if
Well,
you
there's,
think, oh,
go ahead,
Oh, I
please.
was just gonna do a little like reminder to everybody about the presence of something, the lack of something, that light and darkness. Darkness is just the absence of light, right? So
Mhm.
like you open a closet door and it's not, the darkness doesn't move into the room, the light moves into the closet.
That's true.
Moving, I didn't come up with that one, but it's so visually like
Yeah.
profound. The light comes in, so there's just it's a void. It's a void of light. So when you think about the darkness doesn't have any real weight, it's the mirage. It's the mirage of power. It's the mirage of control, which it's really just taking from the light. That the dark forces the only force they have is the energy it's pulling from the light is from people. So in and of itself, if it's deprived of our juju, our juices, our creativity, our emotional feeding of it, it withers away and goes back to nothing. So we shift the balance because we take the weight, like we look at a scale, and the darkness seems to be heavier for a long time now. It's only because we've been giving it the power. We start taking the power back, then that starts shifting back because this really has nothing of its own. It's just from what it steals here. And then as that shifts, all of a sudden it's an easy shift because within a small amount of light is contains so much energy and power as opposed to on the other side. Do you know what I mean? So the balance tips, you only need so much to outbalance that and take enough away where it just loses its. So I hope that visually is like helpful, because I think that it's like the good news of it all is that we just take our power back as individuals, and then we can take it back collectively, and then
Hmm.
it's the balance tips, and we walk into a whole new adventure of humanity with people that are like intact, intact your souls. And so it's not governance from the outside, like government. We have to have laws and rules because there would be mayhem that people do horrible things. No, intact people don't do horrible things to each other. That's such a low vibration. That's the vibration of stealing from people.
Hmm.
Stealing their energies is the horrible things that happen. Humanity, that does, you get people, it's about love and truth and having your own expression, and it's a whole different world. The need of this big governing and laws and all of that, you don't need it in that world because you just don't need it. You don't, it's inner governance. We interregulate. Anyways, I kind of went off on a little diatribe there.
No,
So
but that was really well said too, though. I appreciate you doing that. I do. You did well. I, as you were talking, I kept thinking something that Joel Schaefer said in his interview you did on his channel. And it was really, really profound and really, really true. It had to do with he comes from mostly the Toltec tradition, although he's not. I don't think he's captured by it completely at all. I think he uses it. He
yeah,
uses the wisdom, but he's not just an acolyte. He's more than that.
yeah.
Um, he was talking about, why is evil even here? And he gave the Toltec interpretation as I understood it. Now, I'm not
Mhm.
an expert like he is or anything, but I do recall what he said, and it hit me strong. It's here on purpose. It's not a mistake or an anomaly that you came out of nowhere independent of the grand plan. It's here as a challenge for us to become, it's required for us to move from where we were to where we're going to be. We had to deal with that. Again, I'm not saying it like he did, but it's an apparent impediment that is really a necessity.
Mhm.
And move, but the journey, but the whole story is we have to move through it, not get stuck in it or be defeated by it. And past history, as we've been told, is we've been stuck in it and been defeated by it.
Right.
Saying that that's not the only aspect of the story to forever be stuck in it and be defeated by it because it's so great and powered, or they would have you think they are. The story is humanity is moving through it, and in the process they're becoming something that they never were before. That's that
Yeah.
transmutation I'm talking about. And on the other
Yeah.
side of that, the darkness, or what that is, actually, the evil, or whatever other terminology you want to use to describe it, is no longer necessary, which is what you were talking about. People
Oh,
that move past that, that's not part of their reality. They don't think in those terms. They don't operate in those terms. They don't behave in those terms. And they don't have, and on the other side of it, you won't have to deal with it because it won't be there
exactly.
anymore.
Because you're right. The darkness is a courtesy to the light right now. It's just showing that there's a void. There's an actual void. His human consciousness is filling out and evolving. I feel
Yes,
like it's not within this part of the game. We don't know what happened a million years ago on this planet. We
not
don't have
really.
any record of all that. And I'm think things have been happening. A lot of things have been going down for a very mind-boggling long period of time, really in the time continuum. But what's the game right now is that there's an evolvement of human consciousness that's filling, the light is just filling out. So any place where it hadn't been, then, these energies come in as a courtesy to the light. I know that's kind of hard to grasp that one, but as a courtesy to the light to show where it's missing. And all kinds of things can get perpetrated because there is no light in there. And yeah, so I really appreciate looking at it like that. That is a, part of our growth. And then when light fills out into all the areas, it doesn't mean that, I mean, we don't know what the shadow dance is going to be anymore. If there needs to be a shadow dance, or if it's like not at such a coarse grit level, like you were saying, like we can play these things out, but it's at a higher
That's what
level
evolving
of,
is. And
yeah.
that I like that word better than actually I like it better than transmute or transform, which I used earlier. that is what's going on. Humanity is in the process of evolving
Mhm.
into what? Well, I don't know, but it's different than what we are currently engaged within. And we
Yeah.
talk about what we're engaged within. Generally, most everybody all of the time, they talk about what they're engaged within at the moment or what's going on in the real world, so to speak, as they see it. But if we evolve out of that, then that means what we talk about now isn't there anymore. It's something else. It's almost,
Yeah.
in a way, I'm kind of thinking about the difference between um, a caterpillar and a butterfly. You know, they're not the same, but they are the same. But wait a
But they
minute,
came from the
not the
same
same.
thing. Yeah. One came from one to the other, but does the butterfly look down at the caterpillar? I once was you. It's a totally different thing. Like we
Yeah,
don't know what that thing is going to be. Like we don't know because we're in our cocoon phase right now as
yeah,
humanity. We're going through these violent shifting
yeah,
within the cocoon of, can you imagine like the shift that this glob inside of a
yeah. Isn't that called the
caterpillar?
Shirillus or something like that?
I don't know. This is
I
like
think so. I remember seeing a Star Trek, I think it was, thing where somebody got involved in the Shirilla stage. They were just a blob in the corner. And next thing you know, they were this being of light and they
Oh,
moved
I
off into it.
love that. Oh, there's so many profound things in Star Trek. Oh my God, you look back at it, there was a lot of that was somebody was pulling back the veil and giving us a lot of
Boy, yeah.
incredible messages with that.
That came out in the 60s for crying out loud.
The 60s. I think 60s were this time where there was a natural flowering of consciousness that really got snatched up, that really got diverted into drugs, sex, and rock and roll. Sorry, as much fun as you think that is, that was definitely a psyop diversion of the flowering of consciousness away
Let
from the
me, let
restriction
me,
of the 50s.
you mentioned Dolores Cannon earlier a couple of times, and obviously I'm aware of her as well. You realize Dolores Cannon was in her 20s in the 60s.
Hmm.
She's
Yeah,
she's gone now, and she was an old lady when she passed. So
right.
most people see her as an old lady standing, sitting in a chair saying what she was saying.
Yeah, on YouTube, you
But
get her.
in the 60s, when you were born, she was in her 20s.
She was right in that in
Yes.
the 60s, where that for me, just I don't have any
So
relating points to the 60s.
there were people like her, contemporary with her in the 60s. Hello.
She would have been that wave in the 40s and 50s that came
Correct.
in, that came to maturation
Yeah.
consciously or mentally at that point in time.
They would call sometimes I've
That
heard them referred to as way showers.
Yeah, way shores. That's a beautiful way of saying it.
Hmm.
You know,
And they were in every aspect of society. They were just not visible mostly,
yeah.
the larger society, but their presence was always felt wherever they were.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I love Dolores Cannon's things. There's certain, people that did work. There's some channelers that I enjoy, but I'm very discerning about who I'm going to listen to, what I'm going to take in.
Hmm.
And then there's people that have done, like with Dolores Cannon, who did a lot of work. Her husband was a hypnotherapist and did a lot of cutting edge things. And she then took it to a whole other level with doing this past life regressions. And then
Hmm.
while she was doing that, she discovered that people started going to the in between lives place, so she could tap into like the oversoul. And so she could discuss with that entity, like, what are these lives? Why did you create this life? Why did you do this? Why did that happen? There's always this beautiful, profound, reason behind it, this evolutionary, spiritual, divine evolutionary reason behind the different incarnations and maybe the horrific things that seem to happen in them. But from the oversoul level, that was just an experience in a physical body, painful, whatever. But there's like the eternal being's perspective, and I really enjoy. And there's quite a few other people that have written about that, and I think after her, they've explored this more and
Sure.
more. And I've like read everything she ever wrote. I wish she wrote more, but she's not around no more. But you can get them in audio tapes, you can get the books. But it's definitely a beautiful, I don't want to say it's like a rabbit hole to go down. Because
Well, I'll just put a
to
thumbnail
go
on
up, a
a
rabbit hole to
couple of
go
things.
up.
You mentioned the word evolutionary. Well, that's evolve, isn't it?
Yep,
Isn't it? And that means
absolutely.
there's it moves from one thing. It moves from a butterfly to a caterpillar to a butterfly. Well, they're not the same thing. Well, evolution is the same thing. It isn't just you don't go from a butterfly to a Shirillus and then back to a caterpillar to a Shirillus back to a caterpillar. You
No.
evolve into something different. Um,
Or
oh,
you scupper that opportunity, or you scupper that opportunity.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
And I'm just saying that it's the long story. I actually do think, and it just could be my craziness at talking here now. So, but I do think that this is the generation, including the old folks, that are still walking around,
Like us.
like us, that are part of it.
Yeah.
One way or another, we're here for it. We're not here to hand over to the next generation who's here to hand over to the next generation. We're here to see the end of it and the beginning of the next,
Yeah, but we're here.
literally.
We're here too, Maurice, to bridge the
Yeah,
old
we've
world
been
to the
here
new
for
world.
that.
And we've been doing that bridge. That bridge still needs to happen because the expression of the old world is being seen. We're still seeing that all play
Yes, we
out.
are.
So
It's
there's
not over yet.
still a work for us to do. And when that work's done, exit stage left, but where there's still the baton still has to be passed off. And, because we're still in that old thing. So we still all have work to do. And we take the baton, pass it to the next, pass it to the next, and that's how the evolution comes. But I wanted to make a point here because and in fact, in my book that I just is getting formatted right now, it's called Awake and Aware, and it's the second part to Buried but Never Forgotten. And the heroine in it, the first book, she gets swept deep within the earth, and it's this underground hero's journey, so to speak, metaphorically or symbolically, the hero's journey of self-discovery. She comes back out on the surface in the second book to a whole different situation going on. And it's much more of a situation in humanity coming out into a social context where there's the powers that are trying to evolve humanity and the ones de-evolve. And I use those words very specifically in it. That's the power play. And I
Mhm.
just wanted this to our listeners to just entertain the idea that there are very powerful forces trying to de-evolve humanity.
Oh yeah,
We can look at the transhuman thing in my book. I call it the ultra-human movement because they're starting to mix in the book. They're starting to mix, spiritual, like a faux, virtual spiritual experience to totally hoodwink humanity that they're evolving, but they're not. But within that, we have to be careful is the whole AI agenda. And I'll put a link in the description to a video I just recently did called AI versus II and in a infinite intelligence. We talked about this last time we spoke, but this really is such an important point because be very careful about what you hook into. Is it evolving you? Is it growing that channel of connection between you and higher you? However you want to look at God, source, oversoul, spirit, whatever that is it growing that connection, through your own capacity through soft technology, which is the body. This is soft technology. Or you're relying on hard technology going into mind matter, which is AI. And that is about de-evolution because it's about the cycles of entropy, it's like atrophying the human connection to the divine, and that's saying you can't, AI is here, flat out here. Ain't nothing you can do about it. The web, the dark web, the Mariana thing, the fog, all that is all there,
it is.
and it's been there. I fancy it's been there for a lot longer than what we thought, but now we're just being allowed awareness of what has been there all along. So just be careful when you use that and how you rely on it. Don't rely on it. Using it like, yeah, sure, I look up Mariana's whatever that thing. I looked that up. What is that? And I use it like even when I'm writing. It's like, well, what is that word? What is that concept? Interesting. I'll kind of, research a bit. And AI will now it brings up the first thing with it. I don't accept that first thing has the thing. I'll look deeper with it. But it's also, I mean, it's interesting, but it's not going to write for me. It's not going to come up with that for me. I'm going to work my creative channels. So that I guess is just as if we're talking about shifting the balances of light and dark, we have to evolve our connection, our higher connection. So in this shift, like you're saying, Maurice, we don't know what that's going to look like, but it's going to be so different. We're not even going to recognize that. We're going to be more of these light, intelligent, truer humans. But we have to be careful because you have a choice. Not everyone's going to make that transition, right? I
Right.
mean, yeah, some are gonna be left behind to play it out some more because they're not ready to get it. I don't want to be in that group. I'm not going to be in that group. I'm not in that group. Period. You have
And
already
you know that. You
I
know
know
that.
that. I've already chosen. I don't know when that choice was, but I've already chosen that. So I'm not in that group. Some people still maybe have a choice. Some people say that there's no choice left. The choice was made a while back, but I still feel like the choice is open. I hope for people, but and that's okay. That's okay. That's okay. Not everybody is gonna hit this round. Some people may need to rinse and repeat. I'm not needing to rinse and repeat all that stuff. I've probably done it enough that I'm cool with it. I'm good. But
And
that's
it's interesting. You know that. That's not a hope or a desire or a wish or a fantasy or whatever else term you want to put upon it. You freaking know that within yourself. Isn't that interesting?
that is.
That's not a question with you anymore.
It's not a question. Nope. I know
And
what side I'm on. I've
I
clearly
dare say there's more than a few pairs of eyes watching this that share that understanding within themselves.
I think it's probably very fair to say that people that haven't made that choice or aware of that probably aren't really drawn to this I don't know. I'm just saying maybe they aren't like super drawn to it because it's too woo-woo. Even though
Yeah, well,
I
you don't know
we
that
think we're
though.
not talking to woo-woo, but then again, but that's why I'm writing my books more. It's because I'm taking all these things and I'm putting them into a fantasy, into this metaphysical fictional thing. So people
Sure.
can read it without somebody saying, oh, this is the way it is or isn't, but I can like couch it in made up a made up drama, to let people entertain it. You
Well, that sure, fantasy fiction. J.R.R. Tolkien, one of the most famous ones. You talk about somebody that put a lot of wisdom into a fantasy.
oh yeah, a fantasy. Star Trek, we're talking about Star Trek,
Yeah.
what a visionary. Wasn't it Bradbury that did it? Wasn't it his last name?
Ray Bradbury is another, he was a science fiction writer.
Yeah, but didn't he do Star Trek? Didn't he?
No, no,
No,
no. It was Roddenberry, Gene
Brad,
Roddenberry.
that's it. Okay. That's as close. It's kind of close.
It was close,
But
yeah.
that's another visionary,
Yeah,
that's kind of like, oh yeah, you just look back at some of those early episodes now and you have to kind of, work with the lack of technology advancements
sure.
that we have now in CGI and all that. But the message behind them, wow, wow, that's like so cool. Yeah, so there's a lot of foreshadowing, a lot of
Wonder where
foreshadowing,
that came from.
foreshadowing.
No, no, no. Just the message that was being transmitted even in the 60s on public television. Well,
Oh,
in the 50s, it was books. And we have our science fiction writers of that era, the late 40s and the 50s. Some of the most pres prescient, yeah, really prescient is the right
mhm.
word. Authors. My God, the names they're not in my head right now, but I can think of three. And man, oh man, I read those guys. It was great, and they were putting it into books because they didn't have television programs available to them and movies that 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 were being produced that were giving that message. But it started in the middle to late 60s to be publicly distributed via science fiction primarily.
Yeah.
And
Right, because it opens up people's minds in kind of a non-invasive, non-confrontational way.
correct, yeah, yeah.
You know,
The
it,
message is always there. The truth is always there to be seen. The wisdom permeates everything, but
it it does.
it has to be sought, and it has to be. That's part of the individual journey to find it. And you know what? We find it.
If you're looking for it, you're gonna find it.
Yep.
And if you're not looking for it, then you're
You're
not
not
looking
going to
for it.
find it. No, you
And
stay stuck.
that's that experience for that human being incarnate. I'm not to judge that. Maybe they just wanted to come down and incarnate and just I'll say, like, have a vacation life, have a
Who
life
knows?
where I'm just gonna fully, invest myself in the matrix. I'm going to fully live this life as the woman in the red dress. I'm going to fully live this. Remember the Matrix, the woman in the
Oh
red dress?
yeah. Oh yeah.
I'm going to fully have this experience. And that's what I want. That's what I want. So who am I to judge that? Have your full experience. That's not why I'm here. So thank you. I'm going to go do my thing. We
There
probably
you
don't
go.
have a lot in common. Not a big deal. I don't need to be friends with everybody. I don't,
And here you are, as old as you are, as ancient as you are, and like to keep saying, you look like you're about 40, but you sound like to hear you talk, you, you want to make yourself double that age. Point being,
Thank you.
you found
Thank you.
people that share your view. They're not identical, and vive la différence,
Yes. Oh my gosh.
but
You
they're
know,
similar enough that you really feel at ease, and they feel at ease in your company. And that
yeah.
isn't that a wonderful experience?
It's such a wonderful experience. And then to find people that, like, oh my goodness, what is that? I want some more of that.
Yeah.
I want to be like that. And I'm not saying that from an egotistical way, because I do that. I had a beautiful interview with my mystic mentor, yesterday. And I was just thinking back, oh my gosh, I'm like, I want more of that, and just the way she carries herself and the way she carries her own power and stuff. It's like, that's an aspiration to me, so it's beautiful to have aspiration points, you
Who
know.
is that? Who is
Um,
that?
Elizabeth Seraphine is somebody you don't know, but I'll be next week, I'll be posting her interview.
I want to hear that woman talk. If you consider
Yeah,
her your
yeah.
mystic mentor, I'd like to hear what she has to say.
Yeah, she's pretty cool. And she came in my world a couple of years ago, at a point where I really, at my age and everything, I felt like, I know a lot, I've done a lot. I'm ready to take my game to another level. And
Mhm. There she
who's
was.
gonna be coming in my world? And here came a beautiful mentor in my world. And that's what we do. We come into each other's lives for a specific reason, because we have to have something like, oh yeah, I'm inspired by that person. I want to be more like them in my own way, but this gives me something to move to. If you don't have anything to inspire you or to aspire to, then you just kind of sit there. It's like, well, this is it. I mean, I like to be around people that have taken their game to a level beyond what I've taken it. Because then it's like, it's like that path. I've got something to move towards. So we
It-
all should find something that inspires and a person that inspires us.
And
Go
I
ahead.
was just going to say, I'd like to insert, because when you mentioned your mystic mentor, so to speak, and then you started talking about it, and the phrase just went boom right there. Old saying, old wisdom saying, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. Bingo. How did that happen? How come that is?
How come that is? Oh my gosh, so funny. I've been working with this beautiful energy healer and wise woman for many, many years. And I worked with her like once a month. And then at a certain point in my life, we transitioned to every other week. Then we were working together every week. I had the extra income then. So it was a beautiful allowance I gave myself to go through a huge change I was going through. It was actually kind of through my change in life that she was just very pivotal to help me ground and move through this. And I'm actually going to be interviewing her in the near future. And I just love her. But at one point I was just like, am I ever going to meet anybody like me enough that I could mentor with, that could help me in the next phase? And because the more we raise up and stuff, it's like the mentors are precious. The people that have gone beyond. And she goes, she had like this vision. Goes, I'm seeing you in Sedona, going down this trail, and there's a woman with long blonde hair, and she's like you, and she's gonna teach you some things. I'm like, okay, cool, whatever. Well, guess where I met Elizabeth? In Sedona, wasn't walking down a trail, but she's got long blonde hair and she's definitely a soul sister. And we have a really deep friendship now. We go visit each other and we hang out and nonstop talking the whole time. But and then we're built differently. We're like a soul sister, but we're built differently in
Mhm.
profound ways, but we're also just like a beautiful communion of souls. And so there she was, and I recognized it immediately. And I was like, I'm there. How much does that cost? I don't care. I'm there. I'm going to make that work. You make that work. You find a mentor. They're precious as gold. And you
Mhm.
just, go for it and fill that out. And then, there'll be a mentor for a period of time. And then maybe there's a new one, or you have space, you don't have a mentor. And then you need, it just flow with that,
Yep.
flow with that. But just, there's nothing wrong with apprenticing, and there's nothing wrong with mentoring. That's the old, beautiful way of the village, right? Is that
Yeah,
you
and
had your
that's true. Mhm.
that's you had your elders. You don't get stuck away into some institution, classroom, get stuffed information that everybody has. In the village, they recognized each child came with different set of skills, and they mentored and they worked with the adults that could hone their specific skills. Maybe you have the skills of a medicine person, so you're going to work with a medicine woman, but you ain't going to learn to hunt and go out there and hunt because you're not a hunter,
Mhm.
but you're going to hunt her. And oh man, you're an amazing cook, and you're with children, and you have like a skill set you come in with, and you mentor, you apprenticeship under that. And um, so I feel like that's like a lost art and a key that our educational system is just like stuff everybody in a chair, stuff the same thing down everyone's throats, mixture of truth and lies, and just make them sit there and digest it and regurgitate it back at you. And you got a good score. Look at you're an A student because you could regurgitate it accurately.
I can't help it. I keep thinking the overlay is everywhere, and everything you just mentioned about that is true, and it's all part of the suppression system, the devolution system, to keep you away from doing what you actually know you want to do, you are doing, and you get your greatest joy out of doing and being. And it's just what you talk about, what between us we talk about, it goes counter to the system that we can even get away with doing this, and to the degree we do it, because we're not attacking the system, we're just describing it.
Right. And I'm not about, you're not built like this too. We're just not into that, confrontation, tear
No,
it down, get aggressive. No, I mean, I'm just doing the more Watsu kind of way of
yeah,
the water flow. And I don't have to, and I think that's more the feminine way, right,
it's
Maurice? Would be,
well, Alan Watson Taoism. A
yeah.
long time ago, I read his book about what Taoism is all about, and that you talk about the water flow. Holy mackerel, that's it.
Yeah, well, that I feel like is my essence in my spirit would be a gentle, gracious way of finding the things to flow through and move the blacks aside. Let the water, let the current of
Yeah.
energies do that. I don't have to try to move it. I don't have to confront it. I don't have to, get all upset and and people are built differently. That's just how I'm
Big
built. That's
martial
how you're
artist guy.
built too.
Big martial
Yeah.
artist guy, wham bam, all this kind of thing. Bruce Lee, what did he say? Be like water. There you go. Once again, from a male point of view, of a hard as a rock, all that kind of thing. But the wisdom says, be like water. Go with the
Yeah.
flow.
I have to say, my Mystic Mentor has 5 black belt degrees and used to run a whole bunch of martial arts studios. I mean, she's badass on that level.
I can
Like, you don't want to
imagine.
mess with her. No average mortal man would even want to mess with her. So she has the masculine warrior way, yet she's been
Hmm.
trained like in, other feminine lineages and stuff. So it just kind of, it's just interesting. We all have this different balance with it. But, what Maurice and I do and what my old channel's about is really, is just, is bringing bringing things to mind, helping people remember, bringing it to consciousness, and let
That's it.
consciousness do its work. We're not going to ever tear that down. It doesn't need to be teared down. What it needs to be is that the energy, not given to it anymore. That's how it comes down, is just don't give it any, let it atrophy.
Hmm.
Let it dry up and blow away.
It requires
I'm not
our
going to give my energy to it.
it requires our attention to survive or to continue. And
Yeah.
and with the less we give it, the weaker it becomes,
Yeah, people call it
especially in our own
loosh.
lives,
Yeah.
especially in our own individual lives. And as we
Yeah.
radiate outward, it you're the center, you're the bright light to the degree that
Yeah.
you are a light. And
Right.
you walk into a room and the light disappears, or the darkness disappears. It does.
Yeah.
It nothing if nothing else, it recedes away from you because
Yeah.
you're stronger than it. And
Exactly.
the thing
That's
is,
where the
you
power
know that.
is.
The difference
Yeah.
is you freaking know that. And in that knowing, you walk in confidence. You're not threatened by it.
You think about when we were of an immaturity as a small child in a room and it's dark at night and there's monsters in my closet. There's a
Yeah.
monster under my bed. So what does
Mhm.
mom and dad come in the room? You scream. They come into the room, they turn on the light and it all goes away.
Yeah.
And there's the adult, and it's just like, oh, it's okay. Let's look here. Let's see. There's no monster there. It's like the rational mind of parenting, true parenting. It's okay, young one. There's no monsters there. Well, we're still in this infantile stage, right, with humanity's development, where we were seeing the monsters in the shadows, and in the dark, they're there. I mean, if any of you had like night terrors or stuff like that, man, I could hear them. I could hear them breathing. I could
Mhm.
feel their presences. I mean, I think something was there,
It
but the
was.
light, the light cast it out. So that's what we're doing right now is we're bringing light of consciousness in. So that triangle, that those monsters, and I think Joel was talking about like the hungry
Mhm.
beast. I think what was that he was saying about insatiable beast of just devouring human life and energy and soul. Yeah, that's like freaking intense. That's
That's energy
scary.
too, though. You've heard the phrase "raise your energy." Th-
Oh, yes.
That darkness you're talking about is a lower energy, and
Yeah.
there's a higher energy of which you're residing within. Especially in this conversation, I can see it. I can feel it off of you.
Yeah.
You're coming from an energy level that does not exist within.
It doesn't. And if I see it though, I mean, that is that they present themselves. I have the opportunity to give my energies to them any given point in any given day. We have that. I'm not like above all that. I can't like, it's never an issue anymore because I'm still on this planet in this paradigm. So those energies present themselves sometimes in beguiling ways to try to divert my attention and get me afraid or get
Yeah,
me
but
mad, you
the thing
know?
is, you see it though.
Yep.
There's another phrase here. I go, I draw on a lot of traditions. Somebody pretty smart, pretty wise, and other accolades as well along the way said, "Be in the world, but not of the world."
Yeah.
And what you're describing is exactly that. You're in it, but you're not of it.
Because it doesn't have you.
That's correct.
And when you were saying like the vibrational thing, which is just touches, I like to square everything back to vibration because it's all vibration. That when we were looking at that pyramid,
Yeah.
of the web, the dark web, the
Yep.
pitch black web, the
Yeah.
darker web, we go on down. Well, notice that it gets more powerful the lower the vibration is.
Hmm.
So this is like different. So the inverted pyramid, the more up we go, the higher, the more power there is because it's a vibrational thing.
It
So
is.
it's
It
it's
is.
not like, there the tip of the thing isn't the power play. There's this all going on down here is the power with it. So it is definitely, the lower. I'm like that's like low vibration.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um
And there- and there's
deep darkness, right?
Yeah, and there
Deep
are things that
darkness.
reside within that realm, but
Yeah.
we don't have to. We can. That we have the ability to be able to as a human being, but we also have the ability to rise through it and above it.
Yeah,
And
this is not well, in fact, it's all a mirage, let's say, but it's those things are very real. The entities and the energies, they have a life force to them. They have a life force they've stolen, I would venture to guess with that in and of themselves, or maybe at one point they did, but they've fallen so low that they've got to feed off, which is another theme in my book. They've got to feed off of people with it, but so it's a real thing. Like anybody that's ever, opened themselves up or done Ouija boards or there's
Yeah, I don't
energy
deny
things,
they exist at all.
you felt dark energies come into your space. It's a palpable thing. It's
Mhm.
not a figment of imagination. It is definitely skewed energies, and so it's a real thing. That whole dark, dark, darker and dark web, that's a
Mhm.
very real thing. There's consciousness at those dark, deep levels.
Correct. Yep.
Stop
Yep.
giving your energy to them,
Yeah.
right,
Well,
Maurice? Stop giving it.
in human talk, normally before the computer age, people used to talk about demons.
Yeah,
They're real, but they
they
don't
are.
affect everybody, but they do affect some people, the people that are operating, that are allowing them in. And because wherever they are, they're receptive to that energy level. They can rise above it. The demons cannot, or the whatever
Mm.
they are cannot. They're stuck.
They're
Humans
stuck.
are not stuck. They can be,
No.
but they can also evolve out of it.
You can take your power back. That's how you
Yes.
evolve out of it, is you take your power back from it. You've given your power to that. We can say it's a negative pattern, a controlling force, but you've given your power to it. And the game here is taking our power back from it.
Correct.
And you're a
Absolutely.
sovereign being. You can do that. You may have to learn skills. You may have to learn some magic rituals around this, which would be
Right.
really true spiritual rituals of reclaiming your power. Joel talked about recapitulation and just this whole thing is like going back through and or soul retrieval, bringing back
Hmm.
wholeness into you from where we've given it away. And it can be multi
There are ways.
generational stuff, but then
There
there's
are
ways
ways.
of doing it.
And there's
Yeah.
also ways that are not recorded or taught. It can be
Yeah.
done.
Yeah.
Because here we go. We're bigger than we think we are. And once that realization actually dawns upon a person, they take control. They don't require a methodology anymore. They do it their own way, their unique
Yeah.
way. And
Yeah.
they become that's when you become what I would dare say a master. You're your
Yeah.
own master. You know
Yeah.
who you are. You walk as who you really are.
Yeah. You know your power
Yes, you do. And you
and
know
you,
the limitations, and you don't push them. You know where you belong and how to function.
yeah.
You've reached your center point, if you will.
I love that. It's the center point. Oh my goodness. All right, Maurice, let's wrap it up for
Yeah, it's
today.
been a while.
It's been a while, I know, but oh my God, this has been so good. I really, really enjoyed this
We covered a
conversation.
lot too.
We
We did.
did. Now I've got to just kind of like, I've been making some notes so it's a little bit easier for me to try to encapsulate it in a few
Good.
words for a
Yeah.
description. So wish me luck on that
You
one,
do
because
good at that too. I don't know what
thank
we,
you.
because I say I have to read what you say to know what we talked about.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. And sometimes, like when I do an interview, I go back and I listen to it again before I post it so that I can I can see it more clearly and make notes about what we actually talked about. You know,
Well, we
I
covered
always
a lot.
feel, I always
We
feel like
covered
we
a lot.
talk about everything. Like Maurice, it was about everything, even though, but it has a different flavor every time of what we
Yeah.
tap into, but it's always feels like, oh, yeah, no, we covered everything.
Well, okay, let me let you go this time then.
Okay, thank you, my dear friend. I love it. All right, we'll talk soon. And always, everybody, peace from within, because that's where it starts, that's where it ends. That's the whole journey, is about finding that peace within you. And then just remember to like and subscribe and leave us a comment because we read every single one of them. Um, okay, cool. Thanks, Maurice. Bye.
Bye bye.